And welcome back to my Zelda 2 Let's Play. So, we're going to begin this part in a very different spot. So, we are at the south part of the graveyard near Harbour Town, because we're going after the extra lives. So, I'll be showing where a couple of them are that will help us, and I'll explain why I'm grabbing them in a moment. But there's one. Now the second life that we're going to grab is in the swamp area next to where the Water of Life was, in the cave. So we grab this life, and now we can begin the path to the 6th palace. See you in a moment. And welcome back. So you can see now that we're south of Naburu, where this weird spider creature is. But with our new flute, we can scare the creature away and make our way down this path. Now, as we're avoiding these Geru / Lizalfos that are throwing rocks and things at us, the river creature that we soothed with our flute in the Japanese version is actually a devil. A devil, rather, that is blocking the river. Now, the river devil was obviously changed instead to be a spider because early on the developers of The Legend of Zelda wanted to make the game have roots in Christianity, but they quickly found doing that internationally was a problem, obviously, just with sensitivities with religion and such. And so they scrapped the idea of religion after Zelda 2 and started just using more vague terms such as shrines or temples rather than necessarily referencing obvious religious symbolism. Though it still exists in Zelda games to this day, it's just a bit more fantasy based rather than being rooted in real religion. But yeah. So, just north of where this fight screen is, there is another life that I'm going to grab. So why have I been spending the first bit of this part grabbing a bunch of lives? Because this is the end game. Yep, that's right, we're getting towards the end of Zelda 2 now. And normally I would not go for the lives just yet, and I recommend the best time to go for the lives is after the 6th palace, because you can prepare yourself with all your lives without having risked losing any in the palace by running around grabbing all the lives and then coming back. But I wanted to do this because I didn't want to go back, and I had faith that I could make it to the final palace without losing all my lives, which I'll get into when we make our way there. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that I got all these lives to help make it easier getting through the 6th palace, and also then being able to straight afterwards go towards the final palace rather than needing time to collect all the lives afterwards. And this is actually the first time I've ever done this, so this Let's Play I've done quite a few things differently to how I normally do. Like, I've been using shield much more in this playthrough, which has paid off. I've used reflect surprisingly quite a few times, more than I usually do. And even the fairy spells got a lot more use than I thought there was. So it's really cool to find all these new little things about the game that I didn't necessarily do before. Now, the cave that I'm in here is just for a bit of experience. So I thought I'd just show this off to if you wanted to go after a P-bag. But you can see here we now have 5 lives, which is plenty to get through this part of the game with. Though, I will say, there is an extra life in the 6th palace, but in my opinion, a safer thing to do is just get through the 6th palace. If you've got all your lives, then go for the extra lives, but if not, and you've just got less than 3, get a game over, get 3, and then go collect the extra lives that are around the world, because you want to make sure you have a lot of lives going into the path towards the final palace. I cannot stress that enough. So yeah, we've got a little P-bag here. And the weird scorpion enemy there is a Oh, this is a hard one. Aura... Aruda... Aruroda. So yeah, Aruroda. There you go. Aruroda. A weird name for an enemy. But yeah, they give good experience. They give the same as the orange lizard, Lizalfos enemies do. Or the Geru, as this game wants me to call them. But they're Lizalfos. They are just Lizalfos in design. But yeah, they give 150, so that's good. But they take a few hits to kill, and you can only attack them when their eyes open. So unless you really want to do that, I'd prefer just to get a move on and grind in a different area around here. So remember when I was saying last part that there was a spot in the game that I like to grind on enemies? Well, the forest that I'm next to now is the best place to level up, and the reason is every encounter there will give at least 200 experience. But the little bot shadows, if you go for those encounters, you get 300 experience because you kill 2 of the orange Lizalfos, and you get an extra 10 for killing the 2 little spider enemies. So it's a really good idea to level up here, as it's a quick way to get some good experience and not be at too much risk from really strong enemies or really hard to kill enemies, since honestly they're not that hard. So as you can see here, the tougher enemies here, the red ones, actually give less experience, which is really odd. And it makes it where they're not that worth fighting, because 100's good, but 150 is just so much better. And I will say ahead of time, I didn't optimise this playthrough the way I normally do. So normally, either before the 6th palace or after the 6th palace, I grind my skills to max. So everything is level 8, which is the max you can have. And I'll just say now, since I don't do it, if you level up after maxing out all of your stats, which requires 9,000 experience, every time you get 9,000 experience, you get an extra life, which I think is a really cool incentive to still fight enemies, if you really are struggling in the game and you need more lives. But yeah, I don't do that sadly because I didn't quite maximise my lives because I wanted to just kind of get a move on with the game. But actually in the end it paid off because it created a really tense but fun experience to what I normally have when everything's maxed out. And you wouldn't think that having one less sword level would make that much of a difference, but it actually really changed how the final fights in the game went. But as you can see here, if you use the hammer, you can see there is a hidden town, which is the hidden town of Kasuto. Now Kasuto's never appeared, as far as I know, in a Zelda game before. So it's weird that this is the only town that has a character that is unrelated to anything in the series. But as this woman says, that they had to flee the old town of Kasuto, and we'll be seeing why later in this part. But if you have all the magic jars that you can get up to this point, which means that your magic meter should have 7 bars, you will be able to collect the last one in this house. But you won't be able to get in here if you don't have the others. Now, this old lady also says that there's a secret at the edge of town. And that's a very important tip because you will need this in order to get through any keyholes without having to waste magic from now on. But I'll be showing that off in a moment. But it's nice just to be back in the town after all them action scenes, and as you can see my levels aren't actually too bad. We're nearly at another level up. I've got my life maxed out, my magic only needs 1 more to max that out, and when magic's maxed out, we can use spells much easier. Now the reason why I'm showing off the text in this town is they're quite different with the old woman who heals you and the young woman who heals you. The old woman is nothing that special, she gives you magic. But the young woman, well, I'll leave it to your depraved little minds what's going on in there. And for anyone thinking that that's going a bit too far, no, the actual Japanese version pretty much states what those women are doing. Yeah. Awkward. But here we go. So we're getting our new spell here by going into this little chimney in the house, which isn't too hard to figure out considering it looks like any other doorway. So we got the spell. So what's the spell? No, what's the spell do? Well, the spell turns enemies that are certain strengths, like it doesn't work on every enemy, but quite a few of them, into bots, making them easy to kill, which is nice. But at the edge of town, if you remember, there's a secret. And the secret is, if you use the spell, this giant underground cave opens up. We walk in, and we get the master key. Now, the master key allows us to unlock any doors without needing to collect keys ever again in the game. You still have to grab a key when you beat a boss, as that's the only way that it allows you to continue after defeating a boss, but otherwise that's the only time you'll be touching a key for the rest of this game now. But yeah, so as I get my last little magic healed up in Kasuta, that was our last big town. There's one last town that we will be visiting, which is the Old Kasuta, which is where I will be making my way towards, because we want to go there for one last collectible before the palace. But before that, there is one extra collectible that we should get. So you notice we have 6 attack, which is pretty good, though it could be stronger. 7 magic, which just needs 1 level up, and has a full bar of magic. But you'll also see that my life could get bigger. It looks like there's a little gap there for another space. So where's the last heart container? Well, that's where I'll be going right now. Now you might be wondering, why am I using all my magic spells and fighting all these enemies if I just want to get to the next palace and get through the game? Well, I do still want to get those level ups. And I show here how good the forest is for level ups by just fighting some of the enemies here, because at the moment we have 3,160 experience, and now it's just shot up so much just by fighting a couple of these guys. That's how good this area is for level ups. But yeah. And I recommend for these spiders to either downstab or upstab, if you can get them either when they're coming up or when they're going down. But yeah. So as we get near the beach, we might as well get into where the last heart container is. So on the bottom of the beach there is a spot which takes you to where the last container is. And unlike some of the heart container areas, there are no enemies in that specific spot. The only reason why I get into a fight when I trigger the spot is because an enemy walks up to me at the exact time that I found it, which is why I get a bit confused. But yeah, I decided to show what it's like to fight the scorpion enemies. Like I said, just bounce on them with down stabs, because it's an easy way to fight them and keep away from their fireball attacks. But they're not too hard, they just take a couple more hits, and in my opinion are just a little bit trickier than the Lizalfos. But yeah, there's it, our final heart container. So we've got all our hearts, all our magic. So where do we go for the palace? Well, we'll be seeing that shortly, but first we have one last spell to grab. Now, as you can see in this part, there's quite a few things that I've been going around collecting. And you might be thinking that, oh, it might be a bit boring to not be going palace to palace like I liked in the last part. Well, I guess you could look at it that way, but I really like this area because there's a lot of, as I said, there's a really good grinding spot, and in all honesty, it doesn't take too long to get these items either. Now at this bridge scene, I really recommend using Fairy. It will save you a lot of trouble grabbing this spell. Even if you die, even if anything goes wrong, I still recommend just use Fairy to get to this town, because it just saves trouble. Now, as you may have spotted there, in this town, Kasuta, there was a mower. So what's going on? Basically, there are invisible enemies in this town, all over the place. However, you only need to go into the first house, which is why I'm going now, and not when I get the item that lets us see them properly. So this is it, the final spell of the game, Thunder. Now as you can see, it costs a lot of magic to use. Doesn't seem very worth it, does it? Well, this spell is your trump card in the game. You need to use this spell for one of the final bosses of the game to even damage them. So you have to get this spell to beat the game. But it's not just a situational spell. No, this spell is a trump card because if you're struggling with a lot of enemies around and you find that you just don't have a way around them and you're scared of losing a life or even a game over, but you have loads of magic left and you're thinking, should I just heal? Use Thunder. Thunder absolutely destroys nearly every enemy that isn't a boss. Like, it's designed to be pretty much a screen nuke. It's really powerful, but it's very costly, so only use it when you know you can get away with it. But yeah, so as you can see, to get into the 6th palace, we need the flute to play between these 3 rocks. There's also a van outside, but we'll just ignore that. Now, you may be wondering why I keep entering and re-entering. Well, I'm trying to manipulate the statue to get a free magic top-up. And once I've got it, I feel ready for the 6th palace. So next time, we'll be exploring the final main palace of the game. So thanks for watching.